learn? And what did you want to bring here, and what did you say you wanted to do differently here?
We were given a curriculum, especially the clinical curriculum, from an established school that was very traditional. And so we were not able to change that at all. But we were able to create first and second year that was brand new and very different that we were proud of. And that was Stuart's area of expertise. Mine was more in the clinical education arena. So when he came and we were able to then develop a full 4 years and then became independently accredited from the Tucson school, that I think that gave us a bit of an appetite to do something full scope that we could create new. So I think we learned maybe some of the obstacles that exist in Phoenix and how to overcome them when you're creating something new. I learned the importance of bringing on the right group of people as early as possible, not just to create the curriculum, but to create the culture and the DNA of the school. And that is so important because that DNA, that sense of belonging and culture that you create makes it either a really great place to work or not too great a place to work.
And the two of you worked together so closely in Phoenix and creating what we had here. But what do you think was that special sauce that had the two of you kind of, really be able to be so successful together?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was me.
I didn't want you there at the beginning, so.
We're not going to tell that story. I will say from my point of view, Jackie had a lot of adversity in Phoenix from the central campus in Tucson. Plus, she was, early in her career, a rare breed being a woman in medicine. She asked me last night, I hope I can say this. She said, "Did you ever have your hand slapped in the OR?" And I hadn't. And I said, "What do you mean by slapped? Like gloved hand on gloved hand?" She said, "No, instrument." So that's where she grew up, as a woman in medicine. Obviously, surgery back in the day still is, but nothing like it was. So I very quickly learned, and how much people respected her, that I admired her at first impression, but then as we worked together. And it was just this beautiful symbiosis. We could bounce ideas off one another. And what I found out very quickly is we thought so similarly on things. So what would happen in a senior meeting, we hadn't rehearsed anything. There'd be a pretty tough question on the table, thrown on the table. And Jackie would run with it. And I'm sitting there thinking, she is saying exactly what I'm sitting here thinking. And we have not rehearsed this at all. And then she would finish and she would say every time, "But Stuart probably feels otherwise." And I'm going to tell you, my memory at least is that did not happen once. And so it's kind of hard not to bond at the hip with somebody who just is this beautiful catalyst and synergy as a colleague. So that's how it's been for 19 years being together. From my point of view, if you're going to say something not nice, you leave the room and get a cup of coffee.
Well, despite the fact that you were coming from Yale, which was an issue with me, not knowing how we were going to act in the West, I think we found out pretty quickly I would really say it's mutual respect. And I really thank him because he was the dean, he was the leader. And I've told him before, my ideas about servant leadership is that whatever you do, you want to do something that makes the other person great, not yourself. So if you don't focus on what you've achieved and making yourself look better, and you want to do whatever you can to make the other person look better, that's a nice partnership.
I think any of us would want a partner like that who is thinking about how we can make the whole team succeed, not how I succeed. And I think we've seen how that works well and when it doesn't work well. But think for all of us who have worked with both of you, we feel that from the two of you. And there's a reason a bunch of us came with you out here, because we wanted to keep that going, right? We had learned a lot from it. We had really built a team that trusted and respected each other. And we also laughed a lot. That is always one thing I would say about these two. You can be having the worst day, but somehow we would end up in a room giggling. And that just doesn't happen everywhere, right? You can be very stressed and angry and grumpy, but we seem to always end it in a giggle. And that helps so much.
Big time.
So when I would, we had a nice auditorium in Phoenix, and there would be a little gathering like this before it started. And very unfortunately, I would be the keynote speaker, whatever. So this is how this would play out every time with Jacque. Neither one of us covets speaking. Neither one of us at all. And that's a nice way to say it. So she would say to me, because someone would say, okay, 5 minutes, we're going to start. She would look at me and say, as soon as you walk up to the podium, I'm leaving. And, the first time I thought, that's kind of funny. Good. And I wish I could sit where you're sitting and you're up speaking. And I would go up to the microphone, and no one could see in the back of the room because everyone's facing this way. And I would see Jacque. And she's gone. And so then I realized when she said that, so she is not happy she's in this center seat right now. I think she was only clear.
Not at all.
One last chance at payback. This is payback, right?
Not at all.
One of the things that Karen had mentioned last night, Dr. Stiefel, when we were in these rooms getting started to build this medical school and think about how we wanted to structure and what the curriculum would look like, things that were way beyond my head. But Dr. Chadwick, you would draw a stick person up on the whiteboard and say, well, maybe it's better than stick person, or not so good at stick people even. But what do we want this student to look like?
Right.
What do we want? How can we make this student the best physician?
Right.
And that was really the driving force. And I think, to remember those days and to think about that, right? It was about empathy, and it was about communication, and it was about scholarly pursuit, right? And it was about a physician who cared for their patients and their families. And what do you think drove you to just focus so hard on that?
Well, I remember very well sitting in a room, maybe about half this size, with 30 to 40 physicians, mostly some basic scientists, but physicians, and posing the question, what kind of medical student would you be proud of to graduate in 4 years? And what do you want after they finish residency? What kind of physician do you want to see you and your family? And we would have that discussion. And these were practicing physicians. And initially, the conversations, if you recall, with some of the groups was that we need the traditional sit in the lecture hall. That's the way I was trained. I'm a great physician. It was very hard to convince some people, some physicians, that it might be better to do things different. But we got a group of people who then really committed themselves to this new paradigm of education. And we had a lot of fun deciding, well, what's it like to practice medicine today? It's very different than when I trained, in the 70s. So what is it like today, and what's it going to be like to practice medicine in 15 years, 20 years? So if we look at creating a curriculum to train doctors to practice in 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to do something very different. So when we looked at, I would say there were at least 2 or 3 principles, and you probably remember these discussions that we came up with. And one was knowledge and technology is escalating big time. So just memorizing a whole bunch of facts and regurgitating them for a test isn't the way to learn. So we focused on lifelong learning and critical thinking, and how do you get the students not to memorize, but to interact with the material and with the technology very, very early on. The second one is that the healthcare system and the delivery of healthcare is broken, essentially. It's fragmented. It's not doing the best it can do for the patient. And so we need to have these doctors prepared to function within the system that exists. They need to know it. We never learned about the healthcare system or anything about it. So they need to know about those things and hopefully be leaders to change it back to being a patient-centered way of delivering care. Plus, it's almost all outpatient now. So I don't think I ever set foot in a clinic when I was in medical school. It was all hospital-driven. You never knew what the patient was like before they got there, never knew what they were like after they left the hospital. So we need the students to see what that spectrum is, again, very patient-centric. And then the third area is, unfortunately, medicine, to my chagrin, is becoming less of a profession and more of a business. And that's very dismaying to me. I hate to see that, the corporatization of medicine. So it's become more depersonalized. It's become that less patient-centric, less family-centric way of delivering care. So that's where the empathy came in. That's where the communication skills came in. And that's where the servant leadership came in, is to be very focused on the patient and to be able to go where that patient is and that family is and be very professional. Professional is someone who professes some ethic and some form of a covenant relationship between you, the physician, and that person sitting in front of you that you're caring for. So we wanted that sense of that profession to exist in the graduates of this school. And all of the physicians in the room, when we were discussing these characteristics, were very supportive. And that's why we got such great input from the doctors here. This is where we want to participate in this brand new medical school to create the physician of the future, not just technologically prepared and with skill and knowledge and expertise, but somebody who's got the heart of a physician. So it was fun creating it from the very beginning that way.
I don't know if all of you, when you think about this school, have thought about what went into creating it, right? That those were really the drivers about what kind of physician we want to create, and the heart and the empathy, and combining that with knowing where the technology future is going. And I'm not sure that every medical school is built with such deep entrenched beliefs in how that they want those students to become. And I haven't been at all of them, but I really feel like, President Pollitt said earlier this week that we had one of the most innovative medical schools in the country. And I think that's true, but that's not just science, right? That is how you combine this curriculum with the technology and what kind of physician you want to create. So, Dean Flynn, when you think about that, when you heard that phrase, when you heard President Pollitt say that, how did that resonate with you?
Well, I think in fairness to other medical schools, you inherit what your predecessors put together. So Yale's medical school, I think, is probably now over 300 years old, which should just shock you that it's because the university is about 370 years old now. So it's kind of hard to cast aspersions on your contemporary colleagues because your curriculum doesn't feel like it's staying pace with where medicine is going. So I would flip it and say, if you start a new medical school, I think you're obligated to take advantage of at least where you can predict medicine might be 5 or 10 years from now. It's kind of hard to predict much past that. And then I think the other, which we've done this with a mindset, we're about to find out if we've done okay with it, and that is build a model where maybe a Lego equivalent, where you can take a Lego off, something's a little now, I won't say outdated, but it's less important for a medical student to be, and put something new, a new Lego, because now you have space. So I think that's how I viewed the obligation for this school to do that. So I think every physician and every medical school obviously thinks about caring for patients, but then you have to see it ingrained in the culture of your environment. And you have to have people that model that. And to Jackie's point of medicine becoming corporate, that's really hard to do. We have a physician in the room here, at least he used to, Dr. Phillips. In this day and age, he was still one of the docs in this town that when his patients got admitted, he followed them into the hospital. He rounded on them. That's how Jackie and I grew up. That was the model back then. But it's obviously if he's getting called out on a positive, that must tell us there are forces that are keeping that from happening now. And there are a bunch of forces. So that's how we put this school together. I remember we did a mission statement at Yale. I'm probably shouldn't talk so much bad stuff about Yale. Louis, you need to cut this out of the tape when we're done. So I was in this little leadership group, and it's amazing. Students, you don't know this, but the number of hours, not minutes, that go into crafting a mission statement and vision statement. We got all done, and there was Mamma Mia Peggy Beale. She was a nephrologist in the National Academy, about 4'10", and just a whirling dervish. And we got all done, highly, highly respected. And she said, hey, nowhere in this is the word patient. And it was like, whoa, ouch. So you can see that's how you can get off the rails when you do these kinds of things. So long-winded to say, I don't want to hold past schools accountable. I would say, however, a new school, I think you owe it to the next generation of physicians and healthcare to kind of drive that. And frankly, the easiest thing would have been to do here, the easiest by far and away, is take Yale's curriculum, which I had run, Xerox it, make a little Xerox. That's probably not even a word. Copy it, whatever that means. Instagram it, Spotify it, make it a little smaller. And then when somebody says, well, you're not really looking to the future of medicine, I'd say, that's Yale's curriculum, really? You want to challenge that? And I would hope the physicians in the crowd would say, yeah, I want to challenge that. So that would have been the easiest thing to do. We would not have had to put all the work and still have to keep grinding away to make our design work. And I just want to ask the med students, did you know when you arrived here you were stick fingers?
Very good looking stick.
Oh, quit sucking up.
It's my job.
It is your job.
Yes.
Your job.
So going through accreditation, which is really painful, super long process. So for those who have gone through it, we don't wish it upon any of you. But there's 3 steps. It's years and years. It's 900 pages, documents each time you go through it. It's rehearsals. It is overwhelming. But even as you were putting this school together, the accreditors looked at it and said, you're doing something special here. And they had seen every other school. So what do you think they saw?
Well, it actually was. So you can, and we're not going to get into accreditation here, but you can invite the 2 secretariats to come and do a consult. And so the 2 secretariats came out. We knew them pretty well. They had visited Phoenix a few times. And but importantly was to have the chancellor and the president of UNTHSC in this meeting. And so we presented what we were going to do. And the question posed on the table was, we can run as fast as we can run and start a year earlier, or we can slow it down a smidgen and start a year later. And the 2 secretariats in front of leadership said, you are doing something very creative. Don't harm it by trying to do it too fast. And that was really music to our ears because we thought this was pretty creative. And we had been in some international settings and got validation. It was pretty nice to have our leaders hear that from the body that has to stamp your approval, basically.
It also meant for TCU another year, a couple $1 million of cost.
Yep.
So how did you get the TCU there?
Actually, they were fine with this from the get-go. I think ignorance is bliss. They really didn't know what they were getting into. I say that with absolute affection. And I have said more than once that I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to start a new medical school. It's ridiculously expensive. We have egos over the moon and back again. When we have a problem, it's front page of the Wall Street Journal, as we're unfortunately seeing right now play out here in our community. So I don't think they were bothered by that so much. But I really think, and I hope the chancellor is okay that I share this. So the way it works when you're done with your site visit is only one person is allowed in the room initially, and that's the dean, and they read their letter. They put a letter together. Before they walk out the door, you know everything, and then they do a whole big thing. So we sat down. This is for our first for preliminary. I sat down, and they read their letter, and I'm waiting to hear the flashpoints. Jackie and I know them really, really well. And I didn't think I heard any.
Yeah.
And you're not allowed to respond. This is not a debatable point. We learned that because the president at the University of Arizona, who no longer is the president, decided this was debatable. And she would not shut up. And she just got kind of knocked down and said, no, without this team coming with me. But I can also say I probably would have been stupid enough to think I could have done it. And this was ridiculously hard, and it still is really, really hard. So normally in other medical schools, your basic science faculty are not hired to teach. I mean, that's what our medical students don't experience, but their peers at other medical schools do. They're hired and get promoted and tenured, number one, on their research portfolio. End of discussion. And I can tell you at Yale, teaching did not even enter the promotion conversation, didn't even enter it. And so you could be a great teacher, but if you were an average basic scientist, you were not getting tenured. And the students would go, my God, this is one of our best teachers. And you could tell immediately, if I went up to you and said, hey, I'm going to have a roundtable February 13th on diabetes, I would love for you to participate. It would happen just like this. The person would either say, I'll be there, let me work on my schedule, or that was a person who wanted to be there. That was a teacher. And I would submit that was maybe 1 out of 10. The other 9 would say, oh, let me talk to my chair and make sure I can get permission to do this. That meant I don't want to teach them this. I've just given you because now I can just say, no, my chair told me I have to do what it. So we hired our faculty here under the unidimensional component out of the gate, teach. If you're on our faculty and you don't want to be with our medical students, why are you on our faculty? And then Dr. Alley puts them through lots of faculty development, which also just does not exist because teaching is not a priority. Yale, we had this many faculty development at the medical school. So we brought somebody over from main campus at Yale to do a teaching, just a single teaching session, how to teach, whatever it was. The people who showed up were about 8. They were all the master teachers, and all the young folks who were junior faculty who needed, they didn't come. That was not what was prioritized. So that's what we threw out in the advertisements and all the fishhooks, and then scrutinized pretty hard those who applied. Some did not work out, and others are still here, and you all are the recipients of some of these individuals who came here. And the same holds true with the clinicians. Clinicians didn't have to come here. They're busy. They see patients. But the ones who are here, the vast majority value appreciate, respect, and are paying back what they got when they were medical students, and that was training the next generation of doc.
One of the characteristics I think that the two of you have is such a passion for patients and really a passion for medical students and teaching. So can you tell me about something, when you are with medical students and you kind of see that light bulb go on and you really feel like this is going to be a great doctor. What is that feeling like that you've been a part of this journey for them as well as you?
It's one of the most rewarding things because, especially at my age now, I'm turning around to hand the baton to the next generation. And I want them not only to be able to take care of me and my family and all of their patients in the best way possible, but I want them to be the next group of leaders who want to also do their very best, learn, be changeable. The big word for those who have worked with me before, the big word that I always use is teachable. So I want them to be teachable and to admit when they don't know something, admit that they can continue to learn and pass that on to the next group coming through. When you teach, you always learn a lot more. So I recognize that when I was able to do that, whether it was with residents or with medical students, was much more rewarding for me. But when you see the light go off in their eyes, that's really cool. Nothing like it.
Yeah, I would say I agree with. I don't need to repeat that. I think selflessness is another word that just has, and that's, believe it or not, Dr. Chadwick and I were young once. We were driven by certain priorities. We weren't necessarily seeing 30 years out and what we were going to be doing at that point in our career. I'm always kind of amused when somebody talks about first-year medical students and why don't we do this kind of maybe Sunday evening forum because they're going to love it. And it's like, do you know what's consuming them right now? It's this little thing called step one. So yes, it would be fantastic, but these young folks don't understand what that is right now. I think we lose perspective of that, to be honest with you. That's why we as the elders, we believe we know what's in these students' best interest. But just telling them that, as we all know, does not work. And then 20 years later, they may look back and say, that's why they said, but it's all developmental and iterative. So I think selflessness is huge. I love seeing an applicant who has done 400 hours of hospice volunteering. If you can do that, then I'm really much less concerned about who you are. If you can be in a hospice at 3 a.m, delivering news to a family and a patient, you got the right stuff to start with from my point of view. So passion, work ethic, humility, and then teachable, as Dr. Chadwick said. That's asking a lot. I'm pretty comfortable. I would have at best gotten a C- on that report card. And that's just the truth of the matter. So I can be very high demanding of our students, but I can't say I hate the way I'm demanding of our students. And that's just, I know Dr. Chadwick was a considerably better medical student than I was.
So I'll give you the best compliment I can. You're an academic pathologist with a family doc's heart.
Whoa. Well, let me reciprocate. You are a family medicine doc with a family medicine heart.
That's nice.
Glad you didn't say pathologist.
I knew that's what you
I'd love to hang out and chat with you the rest of the day, but you prefer to do that microphones. Thank you both so much. Thank you for where we are, for what you've gorgeous, for your leadership. And I did not say it that way, but truly for your leadership and your vision and your commitment and your passion. Everything that this school is about, the two of you have touched, and it reflects what you brought to it. We could not all of us in this room could not be more
I
grateful.
want to
Thank you.
Jacque
Thank
for
you.
being a great friend and taking in a little homeless boy in Phoenix and
Showing him around.
helping him grow up.
Showing them around.
So I do.
Well, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity, and you have a wonderful building. It's beautiful. Enjoy it.